Okay, the first thing we got to do is, I don't know if you've ever been taught how to hold your pencil when you start drawing. When I was in college, I was drawing and my college professor was standing behind me watching me draw. And he says, "Lowe, who taught you how to draw?" And I'm like, "Well, nobody, I taught myself." And I thought I was really cool. And he says, "Well, you're doing it wrong." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Hold your pencil like this. So if it's down on the desk, just pick it up and like you're going to show it to somebody. And that's how we're going to start drawing. We're going to use the side of our pencil like this to draw with." This is kind of weird. And let me tell you why. I shake like crazy when I draw. So the first reason that you do this is your elbow and your shoulder draw better circles and better shapes than your wrist does. Number two is anything you draw like this stays on the surface and is easily erased. So if you draw it wrong, you can easily get rid of it and draw it right. And the third reason you do that is this is a better line. It's just more interesting and it's faster. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out with simple shapes. What are the simple shapes you see? Yeah, like an oval, a circle, kind of a thing. So that's what you want to start out with. About the size of your palm of your hand. You want to make it fairly large. This is going to represent his mane. His head is kind of a light bulb shape. It's right in the middle. And you kind of want to put that in just about right in the middle. Leave yourself a little bit of space for that hair to kind of come up. And look how fast that went. And I know that you guys don't draw this fast, but you will, because all of a sudden this will become second nature to you. Look at his foot. His foot is just this kind of oval that's down in here. And then it's connected right there. So that's his foot. It's just this little oval. Don't think about edges. Don't think about muscles. Don't think about hair. It's just simple shapes. Circles, rectangles, triangles, simple shapes. Here's his other leg. It's just two lines. And he's stuck in the grass there, so we don't have to do feet. Look at his back leg. That back leg is this kind of funny shape. I'm just going to come down to kind of a teardroppy kind of thing here, and then a leg down here. And it's just a line. Don't worry about the muscle. Don't worry about all that stuff yet. Just get the shape of it. Okay, everybody with me so far? Keep it really simple. And when you're drawing on the side of your pencil like this, everything here can be easily erased. Now, remember this. Move that bottom oval where his foot is up a little bit. Look at the distance between his head. Look how big his head is. And the distance down here. It's almost the same. This is called proportioning. And it's a principle of art. Now, keep this in mind. If you draw it wrong and you erase it, you've erased your point of reference. If you've drawn it wrong, draw it again so it's right, and then erase what's wrong. If you erase your point of reference, then you keep drawing it wrong all the time. Once you get ready, the most important part of this, his eyes and his face, his nose and his mouth, those things, those are the most important things. Everything else, I mean, the hair and everything can be fudged. But if you get the eyes in the wrong place, then everybody knows it. So what you do is you go, okay, if this is the shape of his head, his eyes are almost in the middle. They're just not quite, but almost. They're about right up in this area. You can even take your pencil and move it down until it looks about right. And then say, okay, this is where an eye goes. There's an eye there and an eye there. And then you can adjust them. You can move them out, move them in, move them up, move them down. So I'm going to adjust mine. This one needs to go out a little bit. This one's about in the right place. Maybe it goes in a little bit. And then the nose is down about right in there, somewhere in there. So I'm just going to put in this little triangle for his nose. There's his nose. And it's not smack dab in the middle, it's off to the side. Look at the space between the left side and the right side. And I might even go a little bit further. If you go straight down from his eye, that's about where the corner of his nose is. So I'm going to have to move mine over just a little bit. Draw it right, then erase what's wrong. His mouth is another upside down triangle. And again, if it's not right, do whatever it needs to be to make it right. Move it over. I needed to be moved over a little bit. You know, if I quit every time I made a mistake, I'd never get anywhere. So, before we get into the detail, so often people want to get into the detail. That's the fun part. And I understand that. But you got to get the structure first. And make sure that you're drawing really large. Look how big this is compared to my hand. Okay, draw large. It's easier to draw larger. I mean, our paper's only 9.5 by 12. Or 9 by 12. That's not very big anyway. So now what I'm going to do, once I got things about where I think they go, I might have to adjust them. But because I'm drawing on the side of my pencil, everything is easily adjusted, easily erased. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to look at some of the dark areas. Like that shadow that comes down the middle of his head. It's a triangle. So I'm just going to do this kind of triangular shape. Comes down the middle of his head right there. And this is where shaking gets into it. So, you were saying you shake when you draw? Yeah. You just kind of hold your pencil there and shake. Now I'm going to take the side of my pencil and I'm going to do all the shadow areas. So I'm just going to shade this. I can see where it kind of comes down his nose, kind of touches that tip of his nose, comes around. There's a little bit of light right there on his jowl. A little bit of darkness around his mouth. This all is very shadowed. So I'm just going to go in and shadow that. And because we're using the side of our pencil, all that graphite, you guys know that the pencil is called graphite, right? Okay. So all that graphite stays on the surface. We can take that and smear it and manipulate it. If we were to use the point, it drives it into the surface and you don't manipulate it very well. And it's hard to erase. So I'm just going to go over and get some of that as it comes down here. Well, it's really dark down in there. Maybe I'll add a little pressure, get that darkness over there. Now, I have to say this too, because some of you are kind of thinking that 1 or 2 drawings and you'll get good. It ain't going to happen. So here's just a story for you. I've been sword fighting for almost 30 years. People now and then will come in and think that they could practice with this for 4 or 5 days or 4 or 5 weeks or even 4 or 5 months and get good. It doesn't happen that way. Drawing doesn't happen that way. It takes years of practice. Now, your advantage is that you have somebody to show you how to do this. I didn't. Even in my art classes in high school and college, they really didn't show you much. So when I became an art teacher, I'm like, I'm going to do art all the time. You guys are going to see the stuff that I do. I want you to know that not only am I passionate about it and I love it, but I can do it. So I'm just scribbling in those little dark areas. I'm looking at any place that's dark and I'm just going to scribble that in. The hair, I'm scribbling towards or in the direction that the hair goes. And it's just a scribble, just back and forth, scribble, scribble, scribble. Because this is all going to be very soft and we're going to smear it. When you draw, it's kind of like a camera. You start out really fuzzy and out of focus, and then you focus, and you get detail, 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 until it's the way you want it. Some people don't like it real detailed, and other people like it photographically detailed. So you get to take it as far as it needs to go. We don't ever have enough time to really get a perfect drawing in this hour and 10 minutes. Just not enough time, especially when I have to explain things. If I could just draw, I could probably do an entire drawing in an hour, pretty easy. But I have to tell you guys, I slow down a ton for you. So if you think I'm going too fast, wait till what I could do. It's like a freeway. So when you get all that scribbled in, and just notice that there's no detail in here. I've started simple shapes, simple shading. You know, there's no detail. We haven't made it punch yet. We're going to do that with our 6B pencil. I'm going to take my cotton swab and I'm just going to start blending. And what I want to do is I want to just kind of get some of those real soft, subtle edges. I don't want hard edges here. So I'm just going to take that cotton swab and just start blending. Just keep it nice and soft. Now, there is no white spots really on him, except maybe a little bit around his eye, maybe a tiny bit around his nose and down his jowls and on his hand. The rest of it has value to it. The rest of it has shading in it. So if I get out of bounds, or if I'm not in the right spot, it's okay. We're just going to kind of go through there, and with this cotton swab, we're just going to blend. I'm not pressing real hard either. And one thing I do want to do is I want to get some graphite on my cotton swab so that eventually I can draw with that cotton swab. And so as I get some blackness on it, I can move it over. I can draw with it. And hopefully you're seeing that this little guy is starting to come into focus. At first, he was just simple shapes, triangles, rectangles. Now he's starting to come into focus. The other thing that's kind of interesting, and some of you have had me before, I don't know if you noticed, but every drawing is a little different. I'll start it a little different, I'll approach it a little differently. Sometimes it just depends on how I feel at the time. So is there correct ways to do drawing? Yes, but how you approach it is as varied as everybody in here. It's an individual thing. So what we want to do is get kind of a ghosty image of our lion. This is still on the surface, so everything here can be erased. If something's wrong, erase it. Now, if you've already moved over and started drawing like this because this is too crazy, those lines are going to be there forever. So now I'm going to just go through, and I can see some spots that are too big or too small or something. I'm just going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to pull those out. Once you start with your kneaded eraser, you'll see that the graphite is absorbed into your kneaded eraser. It's not rubbed off. So you don't get those little shavings like you do with other erasers. This one absorbs it. It sucks it out. So if somebody ever asks you, you know what sucks? You say, yeah, kneaded erasers. And vacuums. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go in and just clean up anything. Just kind of look at stuff and go, you know what? I need a little light off of there. Need a little light here. So I'm just cleaning up stuff. Just looking at it going, okay, it needs a little light over here. Oh no, right now it looks kind of messy. Even mine looks messy. It's okay, it'll look better. So now I'm pretty well done with this number 2 pencil. So now what I want to do is shift over to this 6B pencil. So I'm going to shift over to this one. This one is the same stuff, except it's softer. So you get more rubbing off onto the surface, thus it feels darker. So this is my powerhouse. This is the thing that's going to make my piece pop. It's going to make it really good. And the important parts, remember, are the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. So those are the parts we're going to concentrate on. So I'm going to zoom into him like this. I'm going to just get his head, because this is the important part over here. And we're going to get those eyes. Look at the contrast in the eyes, how dark they are and how light they are. We're going to get that going. So what I'm going to do is I zoom in here. I'm just going to look at it, and I'm going to flip up to this. I am ready to grind my graphite into the surface. And this is the way you're normally used to drawing. So however you are used to it, this is small areas. This can do big areas. That's why it's faster to do it this way. So from here on out, I'm going to go back and forth between this and this. So when I do the hair, for example, I'm going to use the side of my pencil and do the hair with little flicking kinds of things like this. And that's how I'm going to do the hair. And then I'll blend it. Or maybe this little shadow, I might do it like this with the side of my pencil. And if I think, well, there's some hair in there that's thinner and nicer, I'll flip over to this way and do little thin lines. Does that make sense? So we're going to just toggle back and forth between drawing like this and drawing like this. So here's the eye. I'm going to start out. I can say, okay, is that eye in the right place? Do I need to move it over? I think I kind of need to move it over just a little bit. So I'm going to slide it over this way just a little bit. And I can see that his eye is very round. So I'm going to do this nice round eye. The top part is kind of cut off, but the bottom part is very round. And then in each corner, there is a triangle of darkness. So I'm going to go triangle of darkness here, little triangle of darkness over here. And right above his eye, there's these little hairs that kind of come up this way. I'm just going to do these little, this is called a feathered line. And you do a ton of things with feathered lines. Feathered line is you drop it in and then you flip it. Flip, 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 flip. And it's something that takes a little bit of practice. Now, remember that anytime you've done something forever, it looks easy. It's like ceramics. If you ever go and throw a pot on the wheel, it looks easy, but it isn't. And it takes a whole lot of practice to be able to do that. Same thing with drawing. I make it look easy because I've been doing it for 600 years. So, I don't know, you can hardly see what's going on inside his eye, but I almost see a little shine in his eye, right there. Little tiny shine right there. So even if I think I see it, I'm going to draw it in, because I can always get rid of it later if it doesn't look right. So I'm going to draw this little Pac-Man black spot right there, leaving that little spot open at the top. You see where I'm going with this? So it's like a little Pac-Man kind of a thing, because there's a little shine over there, and it's right over the pupil. I also know that the eye is a little darker up at the top, so I might shade that in just a little bit right around there. But I want to keep that bottom nice and light. When I blend it with my cotton swab, that'll look nice. Right underneath his eye, there's an eyelid. So I'm just going to put this kind of double line and leave a little bit of light right there. Now, I can't see this, but I know it happens because I've drawn how many thousand of lions. Sometimes you have to rely on your experience. So just do a little shading there. Anything that looks like it needs a little shading, right around his eye, looks like it needs a little shading in there, so you do a little shading around there. Some of it's a little darker than others. Right over the eye, there's a little darkness there. So now you have to pick up on the subtle changes of dark and light. You see where the little dark is and the little light? So just kind of try and pick up on those subtle shades of light and dark. And just scribble them in. There's really no rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. You can go left to right or right to left, and you can even do it in little circles if you want. Although the little circles, to me, don't look as well as little lines. And so I'm just kind of scribbling in some of these lights and darks. How do you get your pencil to go darker? Yeah, you just add pressure. How do you get it to go lighter? Lighten up. Now, the other thing is, notice our edges. Do we know where the hair stops? Sure, because the values stop there. Don't draw lines around everything. Just let them take care of themselves. They will. Here's that more feathered line, so where his mane goes, I'm just going to do this, and this will define that edge of his face. Don't draw a line around it, just let it get defined on its own. This is a feathered line. I'm rocking my pencil back and forth like this. I come up and then down and up and down. I just rock it back and forth. And that's a feathered line. Notice how thin those edges get. That makes it look like hair. Here's the edge of his jowl. Right here. I want to show the edge of his jowl. All I'm doing is I'm just going to do these little lines like this. And I can see my edge right here, but I don't have to draw it in. Okay, don't draw a line around everything. Just let it happen. Let it do its thing. The nose is just areas of dark and light. You're not drawing a nose, you're drawing a shadow of dark and light. And when you're all done, people will look at it and go, oh, look, it's a nose. Stop thinking of things as things and just think of them as shadows, dark and light. I'm about ready to do that other eye. This one is definitely in the wrong place. I need to go over here more. And it's much lighter. It's in the light. I'm just doing light and dark. so that when you're done, all of a sudden you've got this head that looks kind of like a lion. And you can blend this too. So you can take your cotton swab and you start out and blend it. And I always start with the eyes because they're the most complex. Yeah, they're your emphasis area. And so I'm going to start with the eye and just barely touch it, just blend it a little bit, just a soft touch. But you're going to pick up graphite and be able to manipulate that graphite, move it around. And see how that looks? Piece of cake, huh? If yours doesn't look like mine, I don't expect it to. If it does look like mine, you should be outside making money somewhere. Actually, I get asked that all the time. How come you're teaching? You should be making money somewhere. That's exactly right. It's not the money that matters. So now I'm just blending this, and because I'm getting stuff on my cotton swab, I can go in and look how I can draw with my cotton swab. So I can take that now and I can draw with my cotton swab. See how fast that is? A few years ago, I had this kid show up at sword practice. I go up to Logan, and he says, "I'm a black belt karate. I've done all this stuff. I've got all this." He said, "I want to fight you guys." And he says, "Can I throw you?" I said, "Sure. I weigh about 300 pounds in armor. You can throw me. Good luck." We dress him up, and he comes up, and I give him a good fight. And when we're all done, he's like, "This is different than I thought it was going to be." He said, "It looks so easy, and those swords look so light because you're flinging them around so fast." He said, "I got to rethink what I was thinking because there's no way I can even get close to you." It's like, yeah, art is the same way. It looks easy, and it looks like you should be able to do it. Give yourself some time, okay? It will happen if you want it to. Don't get disheartened either. Once you've got that eyes, nose, and mouth kind of thing done and you're feeling pretty good about it, then you can move on, and everything else is going to go much quicker because nobody really cares about the mane. And so let me show you what I'm going to do here with the mane. And I'll show you what to do with the grass too. Okay, so with the mane, what I'm going to do, and the rest of him, I'm going to turn my pencil over and do it this way. And I'm just going to do this really quick. I'm going to go through and just kind of pick out some of those dark areas. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to get exactly what I see. But I'm just going to go with this side of my pencil as fast as I can. Kind of a scribble. And leave some of those ends. Use that feathered line. How are you doing on the feathered line? Is that easy for you? And it does. It takes practice. It's like driving in England. It takes practice. You guys want to hear my driving to England story? Okay, so I was living in Germany at the time, and I wanted to go to England. I wanted to go visit Great Britain. And everybody kept telling me, oh, don't take your German car to Britain, because they drive on the other side of the road. And British cars have a steering wheel that's on the right side of the car. So I like listen to people and say, okay. So I dropped off my German car. I had a Volkswagen Golf. Dropped that off in Calais, and went across the channel and on a hovercraft, and then picked up a new car in Dover. They didn't have the car I had ordered. Instead, they had a Montego that was a standard. I don't know if you've ever driven a standard. I love standards. But in England, you're shifting with your left hand instead of your right hand. Luckily, the clutch and the brake are on the same side. Anyway, so it was weird. It was just strange. And so I pull out of the parking lot, and I pulled right into the right lane. And there's a big sign there. It has a big American flag on it, because I guess we Americans are kind of dumb. And it says, drive on the other side. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got to drive on the other side. So I switch over to the left side. I'm on the right side of the car, driving. In the left side, my wife was with me. And we're driving along, and we stop, and we get something to eat, and get back in the car, and she's on the driver's side, and I'm on the passenger side. So we kind of look at each other strange. She goes, I'm not driving. So we had to get out, switch around. Well, we did that about 4 or 5 times, until we've kind of realized that, hey, everything is backwards in England. Driving down the freeway, everything is backwards. So about a week later, I'm flying down the roads of London, and there's probably about 3 inches of clearance on either side of my car, because these roads are very, very narrow. And my wife says to me, gosh, you got this driving on the left side of the road right down. And I thought, yeah, when did that happen? It's because I persevered. I just kept doing it until all of a sudden, it just came natural. Drawing like this is going to do the same thing. Persevere, get through the weirdness of it, and all of a sudden, it's going to feel natural. I promise you, it'll happen. Because it did for me, and I'm not special. So where his chin is lighter, don't draw a line around that. Just draw it darker on the other side, and it'll come through. So if I do this like this, then all of a sudden I can see where his chin is. Okay, just let those edges take care of themselves. So this is practice. This is just learning. Okay, I don't expect you to have a worthy drawing to hang on your refrigerator yet. So again, I'm just kind of scribbling through this using that feathered line, and it does take practice. You guys ready for the grass yet? So all you got to do is the same thing with the grass that you did with his mane. Pick out the darkest areas and do a feathered line. Some of them you flip up, some of them you flip the other way. You can even have little pieces of grass that are just hanging out there all by themselves. Yeah, well, I started out with pencil, and then when you get enough graphite on your cotton swab, you can go in and use that to draw with. So you get these nice, light, thin grasses. And you can just scribble down through it. Nobody cares about the grass. As long as it's representational there, as long as it's symbolically there, you're fine. No, you just want to do a little bit on the bottom so you know that he's not floating, that he's not levitating. And then once you're done there, use your cotton swab, go in there and blend it, then add some more graphite. Remember, it's like a camera. We're zooming in, we're tightening up, a little more detail, until you're happy with it. And you take it as far as you want it to go. Keep your edges nice and soft. So take your cotton swab as you're blending it out and just kind of do these little fluffy lines, feathered lines with your cotton swab, and it'll make the edge of your mane feel soft. Look how soft that is. So now I have lots of graphite on my cotton swab. I'm going to start drawing with that. So I can do some of these muscles with it. And look how soft those are. That I don't have to worry about lines because my cotton swab is just going to be very soft. Once you did that with your cotton swab, then you got to go back into it with your number 2 pencil, your HB or your 6B pencil, and darken in any areas that need to really stay dark. You want those areas to pop. And by now, your proportions should be all kind of there. If they're not, it's kind of hard to change from this point on. You can, it just is hard to change. So that's why I gave you that green clicky eraser. That's what you're going to use to change your proportions from here on out. It's a little more aggressive. So I want it to really pop, and so I'm going back in, darkening in some of those areas. Not all of them, just a few, whatever we need. Okay, sign it and put it on the table on your way out.
Or do